Hello there, boys and girls, and welcome once again to another exciting episode of Adventures of the Broken Retired. I'm your old buddy Don. I'm here today with my friend Elmer, the Reckless Remote. Sometimes dependable, sometimes despicable, I might add. We're here today to provide you with a video that we hope you find entertaining, maybe answers some questions. Maybe what it does is it brings some questions to your mind that you didn't know you wanted to ask, and tells you some things you didn't know that you didn't know. I'm going to add in here that I am not an expert on this subject. I'm not an expert on any subject that I'm aware of. I'm just some guy who sits around talking into a camera and has a friend who's a remote control. So, what can I say? All right, that stuff out of the way. Let's talk about this. I had a curious, I sit around thinking about things, and I probably should do something a little more constructive, like finish those counters. Anyway, I sit around thinking about things, and one of the things that came to my mind a little while back, a couple days ago, whatever it was how the tradition of standing for the national anthem got started. Now, I'm not talking about why we stand for the anthem. I know why we stand for the anthem. We stand for the anthem because it's our national anthem. What I'm questioning, and my question is, where did the tradition come from? Did it just appear? Did it just wander its way into societal fabric? Kind of like singing happy birthday to you, it just ends up being that way? Or is there someone who's actually credited with making that happen? I thought that was an interesting question. So I decided I'd look into it a little bit, and you never guess what I found out. I found out that in fact there is a guy who's credited with coming up and getting instituted the idea of standing for the national anthem. Now, this is I'm going to have to look away a lot. I have notes because I can't remember all this stuff. And typically what I'll do is I'll print the notes off and then put them right down here below the camera where I can just kind of look down, glance at them, you know what I mean? Well, I can't get my printer going because the editing program takes up so much space in my computer that it's just so slow. It's incredible. Right now, the computer is rendering, and it says I've got 55 minutes and 12 seconds left, and it's at 44%. Well, at 10%, it had 63 minutes left. So it went from 63 to 55, which is, 8 minutes? And it says that it's down 44%, but still has 55 minutes. So this is going to take 5 or 6 hours. I'm just going to let it sit here and go. So rather than this rendering thing is a problem, I've got to figure out every time I use the GoPro, GoPro, as far as I can tell, I ain't bad talking nobody. As far as I can tell, GoPro doesn't want you to be able to, it's kind of like Hewlett Packard. They want to make sure that everything you use is GoPro. They don't want you combining your stuff with other stuff. So every time I go to put videos I took with the GoPro into Filmora, the editing program, I run into this problem of rendering. I have to render it down. And the rendering, there's some other stuff I have to render too, but typically rendering only takes a few minutes. This takes hours and hours. My computer rendered all night last night, and then I rechecked the video this morning, the same video that I'm rendering now, and I had a problem in it. I forgot to put an end piece on. So the whole thing is only a 13-minute video. The whole thing is rendered, okay? And I added a little video to the end of it. So now all it has to do is render just that end, right? No, it has to render the whole thing again. So it's going to take hours and hours and hours. And rather than wait to be able to use my printer, because I can't do anything while this thing is tied up, rather than wait to be able to use my printer, I thought, you know what? I'll just bring it up on the screen and look at it, and we'll play it that way, see how it works out. So it's being a little difficult. So anyway, where was I? The gentleman's name who was credited for getting people to stand for the national anthem is a guy named Russell Galbraith O'Brien. Now, hopefully, right down here somewhere, there is going to be the correct spelling of his name, and maybe even over here, there will be a picture of Mr. O'Brien. Mr. O'Brien was born in 1846. He was born in 1846 in Ireland. His family then, in 1853, his family immigrated to the United States. They ended up in Chicago. At age 17, which would put it at around 1864, Mr. Galbraith joined the he joined the Union Army, or as Amy calls it,
the Army of the Northern Aggressors.
Yeah, she's a good Southern girl. From there, his career with the Army really took off. He with the Army and with the United States government, he was pretty good. He spent a lot of time. He was pretty good. Evidently, he was pretty good at what he did. I've got to read you some of these positions this guy held. This is incredible, but I've got to look away from the camera to do it. So, this is Mr. Oh, what was his last name now? His middle name was Galbraith O'Brien. Some of the positions Mr. O'Brien held. You ready? Age 17, he was an enlisted man in the 134th Regiment of the Illinois Volunteers. He was then a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant in the Illinois Governor's Guard. He was a deputy collector of revenue in Olympia, Washington. These references to Washington are referring to Washington State. He was a collector of revenue in Olympia, Washington. He was chief clerk at the Washington House of Representatives. He was a clerk at the Washington State Supreme Court. He was a United States Commissioner, a quartermaster general of the Washington National Guard, organizer of the Washington National Guard Olympia Company. He was a lieutenant in the Washington National Guard who worked his way up to a brigadier general. He was an adjunct general for the Washington National Guard. He was an Olympia City Council member, and he was mayor for the city of Olympia. Now, believe it or not, there's more than this that this guy did, but I didn't want to sit here for, till Tuesday reading off a bunch of stuff. And I think that you get the point. Dude was no slouch, right? In 1893, he went to a meeting with a group called the Order of the Loyal Legion. There was about 100 other members there. And at that meeting, he presented a motion. And his motion was, those people who are in attendance when the national anthem is played, any kind of way it's played, will remove if they are non-military personnel, they will remove their hats and stand while the national anthem is being played. So that was where, according to the history I saw, although there's some other kind of weird stuff out there as well, but we're going to go with this. That was where it came from. Now, the Order of the Loyal Legion was the group he presented that to. The Order of the Loyal Legion then suggested that another group similar to them called the Grand Army, the Grand Army of the Republic. Another group similar to them called the Grand Army of the Republic. The Order of the Loyal Legion suggested that they take up the cause as well, which in fact they did. And it became a motion. It went on to Congress. And in 1931, it was actually passed into law. And 1931 is 6 years short of it being 100 years old. So I'm not sure if it's a law or a rule, but either way, the Congress ratified it in 1931, so it's less than 100 years old. Now, I used two names of organizations there: the Order of the Loyal Legion and the something of the Grand Army. And you see, there's two organizations that I mentioned there: the Grand Army of the Republic and the Order of the Loyal Legions. But we need to talk about, for context, we need to talk about, and for more than context, you'll see, who or what these organizations were. And the best place to start the story of who the Army of the Grand Army of the Republic and the Order of the Loyal Legion were, you got to start here. I want you to sit back and relax it for a minute and listen to this. I want you to think about this. Over 3 million men went to fight in the Civil War. Over 2/3 of those men returned from war when the war was over. Many, many, many of the soldiers who returned home from the war were damaged either mentally or physically or both. All of the soldiers returning home after the war, for the most part, they all came from different places. They all had different backgrounds. They all went home to different homes. But they had one thing in common. They had one thing that forever kept them bound together. And that was that they had survived and lived with the horror of war. When they returned home, they discovered that it was incredibly difficult to move back into civilian life, post-war life, for many reasons. Some of them because of the disfigurement, some of them because they could no longer work. I mean, this country was agricultural. Most of the work that was done by men, probably 95% of men, did physical labor. And a lot of these guys returned from the war either unable to continue doing physical labor or physically incapable of doing physical labor. So getting back into the life they had was impossible. And they had not only the horrors of war on their minds, but they had the displacement. Now, when they were in the service, when they were a soldier, they had someone feeding them. They had someone giving them orders. They had doctors that took care of them, although Civil War medicine was, you might say, it left a bit to be desired, but still, it was better than what went on in the wars before that, because the wars before that, there was nothing. And after and of course, they had these guys that they were soldiers with. I am not a veteran. Everybody makes mistakes. I am not a veteran. I would imagine, although please add it into the comments so everyone can see, I would imagine that the relationships that you make with other guys on the battlefield is unbreakable, and many times you saved other people and other people saved you, if not from the bullet or the explosion, from themselves. Anyway, Because when they returned from the battle, when they returned when the war was over, they lost all of the support network that they had. They had probably had families and farms to come home to, but they needed more than that. They needed what they had when they were in service, when they were in the service, which was access to doctors and, more importantly, access to the people that they went through the war with. So directly after the Civil War, this was different than wars before the Civil War. Wars before the Civil War were, according to the history that I saw, wars that Americans fought in before the Civil War were fought much differently. You kind of went to war as a soldier. You went to war as a community. It was you and all the guys that lived around you that you got together, and you got off the farm and you went over and you did the fighting, and you suffered the pains and the losses, and then you went back to the farm together. Those of you who survived went back to the farm together, went back to work, but you stayed together as a group. The Civil War was different. The Civil War had a whole bunch of people from a whole bunch of different places that were in the war for longer periods of time and moved around much more. They may have been from Chicago and ended up way down south, or ended up anywhere. They were put together with other people from other parts of the country. The community camaraderie was formed after they were in the service, not before. The people that they were in the service with are the people that they were in the service with, but that was pretty much the only way they knew them. Previous wars, they came as a community. Civil War, they developed one while they were there. So when the war was over, those communities no longer existed, which made it much more difficult for the Civil War veteran to be able to carry on with his life. He's got things he's got to say. He's got things on his mind. So organizations like, the Legion, the Order of the Loyal Legion was formed in 1865 as a veterans group to bring veterans together to talk and to help each other and to work things through, and to lobby the government to provide help for these guys, because the United States government, while it had promised at the onset of the war, it had promised to people, if something happens, we'll take care of you, don't worry about it. Well, when the war was over, I think they pretty much forgot that. And in reality, they wouldn't have known what to do anyway. So these guys needed help now. They didn't need help when the government figures out what to do 2 years later. So veterans groups were formed. One of them being the Order of the Loyal Legion, the other one, which ended up being the largest and most powerful veterans group of the time, was the Grand Army of the Republic, which by 1890 was carrying over 400,000 members, which was quite a few. And these veterans groups got together to work with these guys and to help these guys, to help them get through. And part of what they did, part of what Mr. O'Brien did with those veterans groups, was put forward the motion that civilians should stand when the national anthem is being played now and remove their hats. Now, I don't know what the status of those in the service was, but I would imagine that those in the service were already under rule to stand and remove your hat when the national anthem is being played, but it was Mr. O'Brien who brought it across the board. Might have to step back just a little bit right here, because there was also something else that's very important to know when it comes to Civil War veterans who are returning home. And that is that many more of them lived to return home. In previous wars, when you were injured they didn't necessarily have any way to be able to save you. There weren't doctors on the battlefield. Civil War, there was doctors on the battlefield. The Civil War, they'd drag you off the battlefield and try to save you. In other wars, I don't think that happened, which means that people who suffered injuries that were life-threatening, or sometimes not even life-threatening, in prior wars, you died, your likelihood of death was much higher. In the Civil War, they tried to save you, and although their methods were a bit rudimentary, they did. So a lot more guys who were more heavily wounded, more disfigured, ended up coming home, and the disfiguration was a problem for a lot of them because it hindered their acceptance back into society and back into their family, and it hindered their will to live. I mean, you can't blame them for that. So, the next time you hear the national anthem playing, and you peel off your hat and you stand up, think about Russell Galbraith O'Brien. Think about the Order of the Loyal Legions. Think about the Grand Army of the Republic. Think about what the guys went through. Think about those people who were man enough, had enough courage, had enough love for the soldier to put together organizations that would provide assistance to these guys right away and would lobby the government for the respect of the soldier by having civilians rise and remove their hat when the national anthem is played, the national anthem for the country that they fought for plays.